If you think of the management of recreation in 3 levels, I think we've had a good practice in Pembrokeshire. If we said we had, say, 8 out of 10, it's difficult to award yourself marks, but if we say I had 8 out of 10 for things like the Coast Path, things like the Pembrokeshire Marine Code, the Outdoor Charter, practice has been pretty good. The County Council's Blue Flag Beaches, Green Coast Award beaches, which were developed in Pembrokeshire. Then in terms of policy, I think perhaps we were a bit lower. We might have been 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. A lot of this sort of thing has been developed, but there is not the policy context in which it sits necessarily. But in terms of data, quite often we didn't have good data. We've got good tourism data. We haven't had good recreation data. And so we felt very much, and this is going back 5 or 6 years, working with the County Council, working with Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum particularly, we came away from a meeting and said we really need better data on who is doing what where. Because although we know it, we don't have the evidence of it. We don't have firm evidence. And that means that we can't make a baseline from which to draw trends. And it's very difficult when we're asked to comment on, say, a new Visit Wales policy, how that will affect the recreation, how that policy works. It's all the way down to the recreational level here. And so we wanted to get better baseline information about site by site, activity by activity. And it sounds like a really simple thing to do. And believe you me, it isn't simple. It's been much, much more difficult than we thought it would be. To get the information, first of all, reasonably accurate, but more importantly, usable. And we've really put a lot of time into the usability of this information. We've gone from a situation where we had lots of information on spreadsheets, which was frankly quite useless, to a situation now where we've got a map-based, interactive Ordnance Survey map-based set of information, which can be consulted by different types of activities. So you can say what activities go on at this location, but you can also say what are the conservation constraints on this location, what are the reasons for those constraints behind there. And at the moment it's a coastal recreation audit for the whole of South West Wales, which again gives a very nice spatial plan area sort of context for that. So we're just not just looking at Pembrokeshire, we're looking at the wider context. And it gives also a very useful place to put everybody else's data, because very often the different organisations will have information. They might share it. Usually they do share it, but quite often after a few years you lose track of it. Whereas having it in one place and geographically referenced, it makes it much more easily discovered. And you go to the place and you click on it, you double click on, you get a certain amount of information, you go behind that information and you suddenly find a list of reports. And you think, oh yes, I'd forgotten that was done. And there's a danger if you forget that was done, that you repeat it. And what's even worse is, say it's a survey, you repeat it in a different way, so it's not comparable. Whereas if you have this, you remember that it's there, you use it, but if it does need to be updated, you at least make sure that it's comparable data, if you possibly can. We're only at the beginning of it. We're just exploring the potentials of it, but I think it's got tremendous potential. One way, for example, we've used the information from the recreation audit to produce a new public-facing website, because the recreation audit is principally designed to be used by management organisations, not by the public. But the information in it can then be translated into a public-facing set of information, and we've used that in a new site called Enjoy Pembrokeshire, which is within the National Park website, which is a Google Maps search-based piece of information. Now, that doesn't just tell you can go fishing here. It tells you about the concerns that we have, that off this headland we've found when we've had when NARC, which is Neptune's army of rubbish collectors, do their underwater cleanup. They find perhaps 3 boxes of lead weights and 2 or 3 bin bags of discarded line. So we want to use that website to inform a fisherman who's going there to think about what tackle he's using, what techniques he uses, to try to minimise loss of line, because we're actually getting a lot of underwater damage that nobody sees. We might be telling a kite surfer that going to White Sands in the summer is really not a good idea, because there just isn't room for it. But go to Newgale in summer, and there are kite surfing guidelines, and there's a set of systems in place which hopefully means that it can happen safely and without annoying other users.